This is the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. This show examines the latest legal topics and news facing families whose loved ones have been injured in a nursing home. It is hosted by lawyers Rob Schenk and Will Smith of Schenk Smith LLC, a personal injury law firm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to the show. Hello out there and welcome to episode 47 of the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. My name is Rob Schenk.
And I'm Will Smith.
And we are trial attorneys focusing in the areas of nursing home abuse and neglect in the state of Georgia. And we are your co-hosts for this episode. As this episode goes to air, it is December 4th, 2017. The holidays are upon us. I think as early as June, I was seeing Christmas things like at the Publix and the Kroger's.
Yeah.
So now we're full blown in it. We got about 3 weeks before Christmas.
This is my favorite time of year, just because everything starts to shut down, courts shut down, and it's just, it feels like a long extended vacation.
Yeah, you just write off December. Like, it's like, hey, let's schedule some depositions for the 12th and 13th. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Courts don't want to have calendars. They don't want to have, certainly don't want to have trials. Like, you'll get that one sadistic judge every once in a while who's willing to have.
I got calendared for trial on the 21st of December 2 years ago.
Did you end up going?
No, we settled right before, but I think it probably had something to do with the fact that it was.
Yeah. That's a good way to reach a settlement is to
have your attorneys come in on the 21st of December. So that's no. So this is your favorite time of year. My favorite time of year is the dead of summer. Maybe a little bit of spring.
I like spring, fall, and December. Those are the only things I like about
anything.
Of anything. Yeah. I don't like January through March, and I don't like... Well, June is my birthday, but July and August are too hot.
Will is kind of like crotchety old man.
Yeah. A more neurotic Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays.
Season's greetings. What do we have on the agenda? What's in the quote unquote hopper?
So I want it, and we're going to have to find out if that's actually a term or not.
Which we have never done yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead.
We've made it up. So I wanted to continue my coverage of the conference that I went to. I had touched on in the last episode at least briefly touched on the 30th anniversary of the Nursing Home Reform Act, the new regulations that go out for CMS, October 2016, then November of this year, and then November of next year. And there are two other main topics that we discussed that I thought were really important. One of those is sexual abuse, and the other one is the use of antipsychotics medicine and psychotropic medicine in nursing homes. So first, for sexual abuse, to put this in perspective, there are 1.5 million people in nursing homes throughout the U.S. And out of that, and this at first may seem like a very small number, there are just under 2,000 yearly reported incidents of sexual abuse. That doesn't seem like a lot out of 1.5 million. What you have to remember, though, and there's actually a very, very good investigation by CNN recently on the amount of sexual abuse in nursing homes. What you have to remember, though, is the number of unreported cases is staggering. It is absolutely staggering. It is, and we really have no way of knowing what the total number is, but I can tell you that it is vastly more than 2,000. The problem is, you have individuals who like many sexual abuse victims, don't wish to immediately come forwards. And we've seen that in the media in the past couple of months, that, people have been coming forwards on a lot of very high-powered celebrities years and years and years and years after the fact, because people, they're embarrassed, they feel guilty, or they feel threatened. They don't want to come forward on these issues. And then in nursing homes, you're also dealing with individuals who have cognitive issues. So you may have somebody that has Alzheimer's or dementia, or various other ailments, everything from, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which I took care of a lady that had that. It's mad cow disease, essentially. It's a very heartbreaking condition that affects your mental faculties. But they have, various issues, and they may not remember, or may not be able to communicate what's going on. But it is a big issue, and it is happening way too often. And I highly suggest that if you get a chance to check out the CNN investigative report on sexual abuse in nursing homes, and essentially, what we're looking at is that it is, and we've talked about this before, it is being perpetrated by other residents, by family members, and by the staff as well. And something interesting that I had never really thought about, but I heard somebody talking about at the conference that I went to, is that sexual abuse can be everything from unwanted sexual touching or rape, all the way to staff discussing amongst themselves sexual issues in front of the residents. I'm sure that I have seen that before as a CNA.
So give me an example of that.
So, for example,
like telling a dirty story.
But telling a dirty story, or even talking about their weekend. Let's say that two CNAs are taking care of Mr. Johnson, who may be able to speak or may not be able to speak, and they're giving him a bed bath, or they're working in his room, and they're talking about a date they had over the weekend and what happened, and they're being explicit. That is sexual abuse, because you have a captive audience, and you are forcing them to listen to sexually explicit material that they may not want to listen to. And the same things happen if people who tell dirty jokes to residents, or telling dirty jokes to other staff members. There was a scenario that one of the conference attendees was telling me, where she was called into and this is an ombudsman, was called into a nursing home because one of the nursing home residents insisted on telling dirty jokes all the time, and one of the other residents, she couldn't really speak for herself, but her family didn't want her subjected to that, because she's not the type of person that was interested in hearing that, and they didn't want her around that. And so that can be sexual abuse as well. Another attendee told me of a situation where a family member would come in, as are the vast majority of nursing home rooms, it's not a private room. Most nursing homes, the rooms are 2 to a home. And we actually went to one in DeKalb County, and we're not going to name it, that was actually 4 to a room. That's too much.
Oh, but, that was last week. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so there, there's another individual in there, and this family member would come in there, and when the resident that family member was visiting would go to dialysis, they would watch pornography on the television, which is a very strange circumstance, but that is sexual abuse. And then you have the story of, remember the Iowa former legislator legislator. God, what was his name? Hayborn?
The guy in the airport?
No, he was accused of rape of his wife who had Alzheimer's.
Right. That's right. We actually talked about that.
We talked about him
in a way early episode.
Yeah, I cannot remember his name. I think it was Hayborn. Ray Hayborn, I want to say that it was. Anyway, I can't remember his name, but he was an Iowa, former Iowa congressman, and he was accused of raping his wife. Ultimately acquitted. She was a nursing home resident, and he was visiting her, and would, per the allegations, there sexual conduct occurred between them. But so this is a huge issue apparently, and that's why I say, the 1,000 and 1,500 or whatever it is yearly reports out of 1.5 million residents is not an indicator of how prevalent this is. Without question, I have seen it myself in every single nursing home that I've ever worked in. There have been allegations, and many of them substantiated of sexual abuse. What I tend to see the most often is resident on resident sexual abuse. But,
that makes sense because there's sexual. We're all sexual beings.
Yeah.
Where we don't become non-human when we enter, and there was a story from October of this year where former President George H.W. Bush was accused of groping from his wheelchair. He's 3 years old.
Yeah.
It was like something like Who's Your Favorite Magician, David Copperfield, and he would touch the girl on her butt. Like these
Copperfield.
David Copperfield.
Okay.
And so he would do that, and he's been accused of that 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
But he's in his 90s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's not far-fetched to think that these residents still have, not necessarily needs, but like thoughts and.
I also think that one of the issues between Stephen Hawking and his first wife was that there were allegations of infidelity well after he succumbed to the wheelchair.
Really?
I'm pretty sure, because I remember being impressed and just thinking individuals who are in wheelchairs. My mother's in a wheelchair, and almost a decade after she had been in a wheelchair, she gave birth to my 2, brothers. But I just remember being impressed by that. Yeah, but anyway, individuals who are elder still have sexual desires, sexual feelings. They're still human beings. And so that was one of the major issues, I guess, at the conference. And the issue is we need to bring this to light because it is vastly underreported. 2,000 something cases out of 1.5 million reported cases. It gets thrown to the wayside and people aren't looking to this. And so it's a big issue that hopefully if CMS begins implementing these new regulations that include a definition of abuse and that focus more on sexual abuse, that hopefully this curtails a lot of this sexual abuse.
And some of that will need to be adequate definitions of what sexual abuse is. Like I said,
I had never really considered the fact that sexual abuse can be 2 staff members talking about their weekend in front of residents or telling a dirty joke.
Yeah. That's the thing is, like, we as a society, and again, with regard to the recent allegations, Louis C.K., Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, like, we as a society need to get together in terms of obviously bring awareness to this issue, but like define what are we talking about? Like, what is sexual assault versus sexual abuse, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And while Rob was discussing that, I looked it up, and it was Henry Rayhan. He was 78. he was found not guilty of sexually abusing his wife. And as far as that, and I bring that one up just because it was an issue recently, not because I have a definite opinion on it. I mean, sexual abuse is something that we have to take into account and guard against. But at the same time, if two people are married and they want to engage in sex, if it is consensual, it doesn't really matter that one of them is a nursing home resident. It doesn't matter what the staff's perspective on that is, as long as it is consensual. Now, that was the issue in this case, and they simply just didn't find that there was enough evidence that sex had occurred. So I don't think they ever reached the issue of consent. But the other issue that we talked about at the conference was the use of antipsychotics, and this is a major problem. Psychotropic medicines are medicines that affect the mind. So it's not. It could be something like Ativan. It could be a Xanax that affects the mind. It's not something you take for kidney issues or high blood pressure. It is affecting your mentality. Antipsychotics are like haloperidol is a big one. You take them when you have somebody is psychotic. They're having either delusions, they're lashing out, they're being extremely aggressive. They are, in a sense, a restraint. They're a chemical restraint. And the issue is that they are being far overused in nursing homes. So, like physical restraints, antipsychotics, psychotropic drugs are not allowed merely for staff convenience. And
okay, so for the listener, why would it be used?
So for example, imagine, if you will, you've got Mr. Johnson, who is 78 years old, has Alzheimer's and dementia, doesn't know where he is, isn't sure who he is, but he's 6'3", and he's a pretty strong man, and he's constantly walking around, pushing things over, picking things up. Imagine, if you will, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, it's realistic. Imagine a 6'3" infant who's walking around, picking up stuff off of counters, going into rooms that he's not supposed to. He takes up a lot of staff time because they're constantly following him around, and they can't just tie him down somewhere. So what will happen a lot of times, because it seems less restrictive and it's definitely less obvious of a restraint, is that they will give him some sort of medication that kind of knocks him out. And it's really unfortunate, but you will go into many of these nursing homes and see residents who are just plastered. They're just zoned out, completely off to see the wizard on some medication that they've been given, and so there's nothing to deal with anymore. I mean, they're sitting there in their Jerry chair, which is the chair that kind of, it's like a medical lazy boy. They're not moving around. They're watching a Cheech and Chong movie in their head, and they're easy to deal with. The problem is that's a restraint, and the problem is that they're being given those medications to make them easier to deal with, and that's against their rights as a resident. It's hard to deal with a 6'3" infant that walks around, going into people's rooms, but that's what you have to do sometimes. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't use antipsychotics. So, for example, let's say that Mr. Johnson is violently lashing out and he's going to hurt himself or other residents. absolutely, there's a reason that they make antipsychotics. All right, and so if his doctor prescribes him something, he can do that. And the federal regulations 483.25 concern how this you go about doing that, and it has to be necessary to treat a documented medical condition. So he's got dementia, and he's extremely aggressive, or he's got a bipolar disorder, or he's schizophrenic, and he's a threat to himself, he's a threat to other residents, he's a threat to staff. Not an inconvenience, but a threat. Then he can be put on these antipsychotic medicines with the understanding that it is intended that they slowly reduce the dosage with the goal of getting him off completely. Now, one of the ways that nursing homes tend to get around this is that there is an allowance to this, that he can be put on antipsychotics PRN, which is just in medical abbreviations means as needed. And what happens is they take as needed to mean whenever we want to put him on that, so we don't have to deal with him. Now, under the PRN rule, it can only be for 14 days, but by and large, it is ignored. Because I can tell you, both as an attorney and a CNA, I have firsthand seen residents who were just zonked out completely on some sort of medication for months and months. The whole time that I knew the resident were completely knocked out. And, sometimes families are even complicit in this. And this is just a total violation of a resident's rights. So these two issues, sexual abuse, sexual exploitation, and antipsychotics were also big issues at this conference. And the new CMS regulations, should they ever, take flight and become enforceable under this administration, are seeking to address the use of antipsychotics by adding to the regulations, and seeking to address the issues of sexual abuse by increasing the definition of sexual abuse, and by bringing more staff awareness to what constitutes sexual abuse. And that's important. Staff training is extremely important in the reporting of sexual abuse, something that I forgot to mention, because staff don't know the proper procedure for handling a sexual abuse complaint. So to go back to sexual abuse for a second, one of the things that we found out at a conference is that oftentimes when there is a complaint of sexual abuse, staff inadvertently, without ill intent, destroy the evidence. So we had an ombudsman telling us a story of a woman, a nursing home resident, complaining of rape, and the staff sent her to the ER to have a rape kit done. But before they did that, they gave her a shower and cleaned her clothes and laundered her old clothes. So they effectively destroyed all of the evidence, or the vast majority of the evidence in the case. So anyway, the purpose of these new regulations is to bring more awareness to these two very important issues, not only to the public, but also to the staff, to help them maintain residents' rights and residents' quality of care. So, but that's going to be basically it for the 40,000-foot view of the conference. We discussed. And again, just so that the listener knows, this was a conference that Will attended the first week of November. We talked about it a couple podcast episodes ago. Will's adventures in Washington D.C. with the 200 plus ombudsman. Yeah, it was great, and like I said, it culminated with us going and listening to Congresswomen Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Jan Schakowsky talk about nursing home issues, and we it was various issues that we discussed, mainly circling over the proposed rules for CMS, and in upcoming episodes, we're going to get into some of the details of those rules and the various 3 phases, because those are very important, and we'll start talking about whether or not this administration is going to enforce those new regulations.
Yeah, but on the horizon, as far as next week and the week after, we're going to have a guest again. Paul Black will be with us next week.
Yeah, Paul and I went to law school together. He's an elder law attorney. They deal with Medicare, Medicaid issues, veterans benefits eligibility, guardianships, estate planning, all of that stuff.
Yeah. So it's been a while since we've had a guest. I don't know. It's been a few weeks. Last guest we had was Scott Fields.
Yeah.
Scotty Scott.
And then I think after Paul Black, we're going to have former assistant district attorney Richard Arman. I actually went to law school with his wife, Kylene, who is still in the ADA's office.
In Gwinnett County, Georgia.
Gwinnett County. Anyway, so we've got the rest of this year. We've got
lots of good, entertaining guests, good episodes coming up. So that's actually going to complete our episode for this week. As you know, you can download our podcast, listen to it on your way to work, exercising, at the house, while cooking dinner, wherever you listen to your podcasts from, via Stitcher, iTunes, or any other app that you have that, I don't know, you can download podcasts on, or you can watch us.
And possibly Spotify.
And possibly Spotify. See, as we go to air, I'm not quite sure if we're going to be on Spotify yet, but I think...
But it's on the horizon.
It's on the horizon if it's not already. So go check out Spotify. I can't wait to add Spotify to the opening introduction to the show where it's like, you can check us out on Spotify. Because, I mean, if you remember, it was just Pandora.
Yeah, no, I remember
and if you liked something, it was like, hey, I really want to listen to, like, Ray Charles. And it would only play anything but Ray Charles because of the licensing, right? So it's like, I love Ray Charles, but then it starts playing, like, Liberace.
Yeah.
And then Spotify came along, and you could literally, I want to listen to this album, and it would play it, but it would shuffle it. And now I have Spotify Pro because I listen to music constantly, so I want to listen to one song over and over and over again. Anyway,
I can't imagine why anyone would ever purchase music anymore. I mean, the way that musicians make their money now off of concerts, you don't make it off of
that. And I got into it. I don't know if I got into an argument with somebody about the fact that we're gonna regress, thankfully, back to where only people that are doing it for the love of music do it. Like when Woody Guthrie, who's the guy that would jump on trains, This Land Is Your Land? Arlo Guthrie.
I don't know. Sorry, can't support you on this.
Where he's living off of the gratitude of the people that like, here's a dinner for you, play a couple songs for us.
Yeah, I mean that was the 60s though. I mean I can understand
the 20s and 30s. Like where it's like there is no music industry. It's just dudes and ladies going around making music for the love of it. That's what I like. Anyway, so thank you, Spotify, for killing the music industry. Anyway, that completes this episode. You can also watch us nursinghomeabusepodcast.com or on our YouTube channel. And with that, we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, and feel free to leave us some feedback. And for more information about the topics discussed in this episode, check out the show website, nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. That's nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. See you next time.